Hi there, Dr. Matthew Korn here, 65 Plus Center for Active Aging here with your weekly rounds. Today is Friday, May 1st. April flowers bring May flowers, as they say. It's actually a beautiful day out there. Normally, this time of year, it's quite humid, a little bit more rain. Kind of getting into that summer mode here in Southwest Florida, but feels like a winter day out there, which is a good thing. Anyway, today we got a lot to talk about. Just a recap from the earlier in the week. Um, Beaches are back open, and I think you probably all know by now, watching the news, that the governor of Florida has come up with his own kind of phase one reopening plan. I'll kind of review those basically today. I haven't seen the official document out of the governor's office, but there was some an outline, and I think he gave a kind of a slideshow presentation in one of his press conferences on, I believe, yesterday or Wednesday. So I'll kind of review those in basic. Or also, the topic for today that I'm going to talk about is shoulder pain, and more specifically, shoulder tendonitis and bursitis. And we'll go a little bit about my take on how that condition affects older adults and what to do about it. In brief, also, we are starting our phase one reopening Monday, May 4th. You should have received a newsletter. And if you haven't, an e newsletter, that is, an email explaining the essence of our phase one reopening on Monday. I'm going to go over that in just a second. Governor DeSantis's reopening plan essentially looks like this. Um, all retail stores, including restaurants, can open back up. Indoor spaces need to be limited by a 25% capacity. It's recommended that people wear masks, but it is not required. Outdoor seating, they can sit as many people as they want, as long as it's 6 feet apart. Um, Retail stores that are in close quarters, like beauty salons, barbers, gyms, fitness centers, sporting activities, all those continue to be closed. And just so you know, the three counties in South Florida, Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach County, they have their totally own separate rules because that's where we're seeing the most cases. So everything I'm talking about applies essentially to everything but those three South Florida counties. Um, and just so you know, physical therapy is considered an essential service. I could have remained open the entire time during our quarantine or our stay-at-home uh, policy is in place, but I chose not to. We've actually been closed since March 18th, so that's actually 6 weeks we've shut down to protect the interests of our patients. And with my phase one program, it's really spelled out in excellent detail on our website. So if you didn't receive the newsletter, you can go to our website. If you look at the header or top of the page, you'll see 65 plus phase one reopening plan. You'll click on that and you'll learn all the steps. We've had a lot of interest. Probably more than I expected. Um, but we're going to accommodate everyone that we can, and hopefully as things continue to get better, we can move toward a phase two, which be a much more normal um, appearing practice where we have a few more people in the building, again following some distancing rules and following our very strict sanitization and disinfection rules. Um, a couple things I want to mention is I did run some errands today and was surprised to see, I would probably guess about 10% of the people I saw in closed spaces indoors were wearing masks. And many of them were older adults. And I want to continue to encourage older adults to wear masks. Only make essential trips. I mean, obviously, I was in a UPS store and a CVS, and in both those places, I wasn't seeing a lot of masks and I wasn't seeing a lot of social distancing. And I really think that's a mistake, especially for older adults. Um, you're younger, maybe you can take your chances, but I think the rules apply to everybody, in my opinion. So please consider non-essential trips. I mean, even restaurants. I mean, I think takeout's fine. I just don't see the need to be sitting at a restaurant when you can take out or order in or have delivery. There's so many options now. And that brings us to our next subject, which is shoulder pain, and particularly shoulder tendonitis and bursitis, because they're typically mixed together and are typically co-conditions with the older adult. So oftentimes patients that have shoulder bursitis also have shoulder tendonitis and vice versa. And to give you a quick anatomy lesson, your humerus, which is your upper arm bone, has a ball on the top end of it, and that articulates with the shoulder blade or scapula. And then the bottom brace, the bottom part of the bone, is what is made up of your elbow. So we have a number of muscles that help to keep that shoulder in place. It's a radial joint, so it can do all kinds of neat stuff. And I think everyone knows what the rotator cuff is. And I don't like the word rotator cuff. I think it's a misnomer. Lots of muscles help rotate the shoulder. The rotator cuff essentially stabilizes that ball inside that socket. And over time, there's a lot of wear and tear on that joint. You probably know somebody who's had a shoulder replacement, and that's one of the good things. We're not talking about shoulder replacements here, and people with tendonitis and bursitis don't qualify for shoulder replacements. But what that tells you is that a lot of people have degenerative changes in the shoulder as they age. And that includes the health of the rotator cuff, which again, I like to consider more of what I call the stability cuff. And what I mean is it's going to keep that ball centered in that socket and stable as you have an outstretched arm or you reach up overhead. And I've read some studies that show that a pretty high proportion, I don't have the specific number, but I want to say in the 30th percentile, 30% of older adults over the age of 65 have some degree of tearing of one or more of the rotator cuffs. Now, one of the rotator cuffs is one of the rotator cuff muscles is much more susceptible to tear than the others. I won't go into all the long and complicated names. And the one that tears most frequently, which is called the supraspinatus, overlaps one of the bursa. And a bursa is a fat pad that helps to protect bony prominences. So essentially, wherever you have a bony prominence, an elbow is a good example, front of the knee, and the corner of the shoulder right here is where you have a little fat pad. And normally that helps to buffer the space between two bones when they come into close contact with each other. So essentially what happens is as the rotator cuff starts to wear down and break down, tendonitis, we won't get into too much of the types of tendinitises because really what I think older adults are dealing with is something called a tendinosis, which is basically an age-related chronic degeneration of the tendon as opposed to a tendinitis, which might happen if you play too much pickleball and it hurts you for a week or two. So chronic tendinosis, which is usually involves fraying and degradation of the tendon on a cellular level. In one of my recent news articles that I've written for the Wellbeing magazine, we talked about the acronym AGE, AGE, and AGE stands for Advanced Glycation End Products. And what that basically means is that over time, the glucose proteins in your body, which naturally occur, break down soft tissues like the tendons of the shoulders, Achilles tendons, and other areas. And if you're a diabetic or you've had a lot of steroids, as you know, steroids are glycogen based or a glucocorticoid. So what that basically means is that sugar based product might help you get out of inflammation or pain, but it actually degrades the joint more, which is why the physicians and surgeons don't want to give those shots too close together. So essentially what happens is the rotator cuff tendon is wearing out and fraying and wearing down, and it's no longer able to help stabilize that ball inside that socket, and then the bursa takes the beating as the bones come together, and then you have the tendonitis and the bursitis often together. One of the greatest techniques that I've ever learned to treat this is with our class 4 laser system. It does a tremendous job of reducing that inflammation, and then we work on strengthening that stability mechanism of those 4 rotator cuffs. Now, I will say that if you do have advanced arthritis, that kind of changes everything. It makes things more complicated because no matter how strong the rotator cuff is, no matter how much we reduce the inflammation of the tendon or the bursa, if the ball and socket joint is essentially worn out, there's instability no matter what. And a lot of times people have chronic tendonitis and bursitis on top of arthritis are the candidates for a shoulder replacement. And before you're intimidated by that, I would probably say that shoulder replacement is one of the most successful orthopedic type surgeries that I can be seen being done right now, at least from a recuperative and rehabilitative standpoint. I still would probably put hips on the top of the list in terms of ease of recovery and rehabilitation, followed by shoulder, followed by knee. So that shouldn't intimidate somebody if you're a candidate, but I wouldn't go rushing into that. Physical therapy is a great place to start to manage your condition. Obviously, there's some other modalities that we can use that I won't get into for this discussion, but we can help to identify the condition and treat the condition. And if you do some maintenance exercises to maintain the strength and flexibility of the joint and the surrounding musculature, you're less likely to deal with this on a recurring basis. So there you have it. This is our weekly rounds. Looking forward to seeing people back in the clinic here on Monday, May 4th. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us via email or text or give us a call. We are having amended business hours, so we're not going to be open up our regular hours. As a matter of fact, we're only going to be open Monday through Thursday, but we'll be here most of the day, about 8 o'clock to 3 o'clock, serving any and all people's needs for physical therapy and wellness for aging adults. Hey, thanks for watching. Be well, and I'll probably back off on the the daily dose video cast, but I will stick with the weekly rounds on every Friday, and as well as our newsletter. So register for our newsletter online if you're not getting those, and be on the lookout for your newsletter tomorrow if you have been signed up for that. Okay, be well, take care, we'll talk to you soon.